reorganization meeting to order. If I could please ask everyone to stand for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first order of business is the oaths of office for Kim Cannizzaro and James Baglioli. I'm going to come and ask you to read your oath, and then I'm going to ask you to sign it.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Office of School District Board Member at the Clarence Central School District, Erie County, New York, according to the best of my ability. And this is for Kim. No problem. James Baglioli for the term of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the official of School District Board Member of the Clarence Central School District, Erie County, New York, according to the best of my ability. Kim Cannizzaro for the term of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025.
Be a round of applause for our board members.
Our next item is to vote for president and vice president. I would ask for any for the 22-23 school year. I would ask for any nominations for president.
I nominate Mike Fuchs.
Are there any others? I would ask for nominations for vice president.
Thank you, everyone, for your support. Again, I appreciate it. I'd like to nominate James Baglioli as vice president.
Are there any other nominations? Since we have no other nominations, those will stand.
Thank you.
Do you need any?
So Mike Fuchs will be president and James Baglioli will be vice president. The last item before turning this over to Mr. Fuchs is the code of conduct for board members. Mr. Fuchs has the code of conduct. If you could share that and have it signed by members.
Sure. It's okay. I'll just read through it quickly for the record. For those that aren't familiar, it's consistent with what we've had in years prior. I'll read through it. I've signed it, and then I'll pass it down to board members on my right, and then we can circle it back the other way. So the board, Clarence Central School District Board of Education Code of Conduct, consistent with our dedication to children, learning, and community, members of the Clarence Central School District Board of Education hereby adopt this code of conduct. In so doing, we state our belief that our code of conduct promotes public confidence in the schools and advances the attainment of district goals, and thus we recognize the following: that we have been selected by our fellow citizens and entrusted with the authority and obligation to strive to provide all students of our community with equal opportunity for educational excellence, that the future welfare of our community, state, and nation depends in large measure upon the quality of education we provide to fit the needs of every learner, that legally our authority is derived from the state, which ultimately sets the parameters in which our service is conducted, that we must never neglect our personal obligations to our community and our legal obligations to the state, nor surrender these responsibilities to any other person, group, or our organization, but that beyond these, We have a moral and civic obligation to the nation, which we can remain strong and free only so long as public schools in the United States of America are kept free and strong. In view of the foregoing considerations, it shall be our endeavor as school board members to devote time, thought, and study to the duties and responsibilities of being school board members, as well as participate in training activities so that we may render effective, informed, and credible service. Regularly attend board meetings and take actions after careful study of the issues facing the board and after full discussion at such meetings. Work with fellow board members in spirit of harmony and cooperation in spite of differences of opinion that arise during vigorous debate of points at issue. Base decisions upon available facts in each situation, to base each vote upon honest conviction, unswayed by partisan bias. Thereafter, to abide by and uphold the final majority decision of the board. Communicate concerns and public reaction to board policies and school programs to the superintendent and other board members in a professional manner. Remember that as individuals, school board members have no legal authority outside the meeting of the board, and that this must be reflected in all expressions with staff, the local citizen, and the media. Resist temptation and outside pressure to use our positions as school board members to benefit either ourselves or any other individual or agency apart from the total interest of our school district. Agree to honor our position and the people who elected us by maintaining high ethical standards and by not engaging in any activity which presents a conflict of interest or an appearance of impropriety. Publicly disclose the nature and extent of any interest we, as school board members, have in any proposed contract or agreement which comes before the board. Keep confidential matters pertaining to the schools which are either legally required to be confidential and or, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the school. Follow the dictates of the state's open meeting law. Recognize that the primary function of a school board is to establish policies which are in conformity with applicable laws and regulations by which the schools are to be administered, but that the administration of the educational program and the conduct of the school business shall be left to the superintendent of schools and his staff. Strive to procure, when the vacancy exists, the employment of a superintendent who is best qualified for the job and who represents the interests of our community. Strive to build and exercise a relationship with the superintendent that is constructive and positive and which enables district staff to function as effectively as possible. Make decisions having received the recommendations of the superintendent in matters of employment or dismissal of school personnel. Welcome and encourage active involvement by citizens, including parents and organizations in board activities regarding establishing school policy and developing future plans. And finally, strive step by step towards ideal conditions for most effective school board service to our community in the spirit of teamwork and devotion to public education in a manner which serves as a role model to our students and which demonstrates that school board service is the greatest instrument for preservation and perpetuation of our respective representative democracy. So with that, I've signed it, and I'll pass it down to my right. Thank you. All right. I guess we'd begin our standard meeting at this point. For roll call, all board members are in attendance, and I guess I'd just like to echo the acknowledgement at the onset and congratulate James Baglioli and Kim Carnazaro on your election, and James for another 3 years with us. And Kim, welcome aboard. It's good to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So in our packet, we have the agenda for this evening. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Additionally, we have a number of appointments and required resolutions that are included in our packet for the 22-23 school year. Far-reaching, I'm not sure if Dr. Frame or Dr. Gripka, if you have any comments or if any board members have any questions.
I would just like to mention, when you look at the recommendations and appointments, where there is no compensation listed, it is because there is no compensation. And I also want to mention that under the petty cash, you'll see there's $100 for different buildings. That is not a stipend. That is actually the amount of the petty cash. And there is one other change on here that's a little different. We are appointing a new internal claims auditor. This is something that was in process with Mr. Mancuso. There was some concern with the current auditor that we were having. We just weren't building a relationship with her as he thought we should, and as I'm used to having with other auditors. So we do have somebody who's been an auditor for several school districts who's very experienced. So we're looking to change internal claims auditors this year.
Is the new one listed here, or is that the old one?
Culver's the new one. Right now, we're using a BOCES service, and it's been a
Right.
couple different people, and I think that's some of the problem.
Does any board member have any other comments or questions?
About just that, or about the resolutions, Mike?
The resolutions.
I have a couple questions. One, resolution number 4, resolution regarding investment of district funds. Under the last section, it lists classroom funds. Are those ours to work with? I know normally we don't get involved with classroom funds.
So we normally don't, and under the 2 GASBs ago, they made classroom funds part of the A fund. And as part of the A fund, you can invest them. I don't know that we would do that, but it does give us the option if they become a large enough number. Whenever you invest money, it goes back to the funds, so it gives them the opportunity to earn some additional interest.
What would be considered large enough?
I would have to look at what's in there, and then you have to portion it out. So, if you're looking at prom, sometimes you're seeing 40, 50,000. They might want to consider that.
Thank you.
But wouldn't prom need that money? Like, we wouldn't invest their, wouldn't they need to use that to spend it, like to reserve things?
So you don't typically do that until your senior year, and you have 3 years to build it up. So sometimes it sits for a few years. We always think of investment as long-term, but very often you can invest things in 3 to 6 months and still make some interest.
But if they came to you and said, okay, we need money tomorrow, would you just front the money for them and then like take, like how does that work? Cause like I don't know that a club would know enough in advance to be like, okay, I'm gonna need to spend this. Oh wait, it's all invested. Like you would front the money to them,
So,
correct?
well, there are some investments that are highly liquid. So if you went to NICLAS, it's a pool investment. So you don't have to commit to you don't have to commit to a time period. So if they said that, you could have it within 24 hours. There are investments that are not, that are a little bit more liquid.
Sorry, a lot of questions
That's
because I've
okay.
never seen this done before.
Yeah.
So like, would you, if you decide to invest, like say the prom money, would you go to the person in charge of the prom and say, listen, we're investing your money, or do they know nothing about it?
I don't think this does not require that you do that, and the law doesn't require that you do that. You just have to make sure that those funds are available if needed. I would probably work with a treasurer. So the building treasurers really maintain the funds at that level. So I'd probably work with a treasurer. And they would have to know, because if it's interest bearing, you have to give them the interest.
Okay.
So I mean, just conceptually
I thought the
speaking-
principals ran the funds. Don't the principals?
Usually I think it's both principals and somebody else at the building level.
So I mean, conceptually speaking, if there's a class that is accumulating funds, raising with the purpose of the senior prom over time, I mean, we could invest it in
could.
short-term funds. They would get any returns that the investments are guaranteed. Correct? I mean, it's not that the money is at risk.
Correct.
It would only grow, I guess, if you will, keeping it
Correct.
simple. So I think the question would be, is there an awareness in talking with the class officers or advisors or what have you, that this would be done to make sure that they're not planning for any outlay before the investments would run its cycle?
If we went in ahead of time, yes, we would take a look at what the club was doing, when they were spending it. I've worked at districts where they would do fundraising for travel, and the travel wouldn't happen for 2 years. So you would have 2 years of that money literally just sitting there. So that's the perfect application for something like this. But you would work with the club advisors.
Any other questions?
Patty, is the resolution to transfer money between accounts is part of this or is part of your presentation? The accounting part of the
It's
agenda?
part of this.
This?
Yes.
Ed, I know you had asked for a limit of $100,000 to transfer between funds. At some point, if we feel that that's not working, we have the option to come back and update the resolution to a different amount?
I think we can always, yes, we can always update that. That was the initial amount we talked about at one of our sessions. This year, I'm still working off of a budget that was created by Mr. Mancuso, and I know there is going to be a need for some transfer. As we tighten up the budget, we can take a look at that number again, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board on the appointments and required resolutions? Seeing none, could I get a motion to approve the 22-23 appointments and required resolutions?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries. All right, the next item in our packet is meeting minutes. We have 2 that we need to approve this evening. The first is from our standard scheduled meeting on June 13th, along with the executive session. The second set of meetings is a brief executive session that was held on June 23rd. If no one has any questions, could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Josh. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, James. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that carries. All right. We have no well, does anybody have any announcements?
Mike, I actually have 2 announcements, fun announcements today. The first, CSEF has been doing some planning, and I'm happy to announce that the Clarence faculty basketball event is back on for the upcoming school year. It's going to be held on Thursday, March 23rd, so mark your calendars for that. And the second announcement that I have is that on Monday, August 1st, is the Taste of Clarence. And we have a judge sitting up at this table. Dr. Frame is going to be one of the tasters for Taste of Clarence. So if you want to stop by on August 1st at 4 p.m., you can, as he tells me, he's going to go tasting throughout the town.
I'll be training all summer, John, for this position. My vote can be bought as we get closer to August 1st, so spread the word. I don't know how you lined that up, but thank you for doing it. I am
You're welcome.
excited, and we'll look forward to the Taste of Clarence.
That's it.
Thank you, Don. Does anybody else have anything? Okay. We have no correspondence received since the last board meeting in June. I'm not aware of any unfinished business to bring before the board at this time. So with that, Dr. Frame, I turn it over to you in the superintendent's report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Fuchs. As you know, reorganizational meetings or organizational meetings typically are a little bit shorter in length, but I did have a couple quick updates for you this evening, and then looking forward to a presentation by our high school principal and social studies department chair on a community service recommendation. But I did just want to make a couple quick comments. The first is Happy New Year, everybody. We had a busy June with lots of celebrations, culminating in graduation, and hopefully you were able to relax and recharge a bit over a 4th of July weekend, but it is great to see you again. We welcome Kim to the board and congratulate Mike and James on their appointment as officers. So Happy New Year, everyone. We do have one board member who is not with us tonight, and that is our new student representative to the board. I know that the topic came up at the last meeting. I said, I think I know who it is, but want to double check. So our student representative for this coming school year will be a senior named Emmett Forrestal. So Emmett is the student council president, who also will be joining us as the board table as a student representative. So I met with Emmett a couple weeks ago and talked about the position. So he will be joining us at the board table. There will be a spot on the board agendas where he'll do a sort of a 5-minute report that really speaks to issues that are of concern to the student body. And hopefully it's something where as we are talking about different issues and making recommendations or decisions that if we'd like a representative from the student body to weigh in, that we can engage Emmett in that conversation. I've only met him a couple times, but you're going to love him. He is a fantastic young man, super bright, super motivated, really involved. He actually isn't with us tonight because he's in Boston for most of the summer doing an internship. And so we'll look forward to seeing him at our next meeting, but wanted to just give you a quick update there. Wanted to just thank Ken Smith, our high school principal, and his team for just a top-notch graduation. What a wonderful way to end the year on, I believe it was June 25th. Just an incredible group of 348 seniors. Would like to thank faculty and staff. Sometimes you think, boy, it'll be tough to get folks to come and volunteer after the school year has come to a close. It's a warm morning for graduation, and we had 45 members of our faculty and staff volunteer to come back and help to honor a really special group of young people. So just wanted to thank our high school team for setting that up. I've heard a lot of positive comments on our graduation ceremony. As you know, historically, it's taken place at Kleinhans Music Hall. This was, I believe, the second year in a row where it had taken place on our football field in our football stadium. And got a lot of positive feedback. I think the one thing that people have asked about is the temperature in terms of day and in terms of time. Probably by the time the ceremony came to a close, it was low 80s, and the turf kicks the temperature up a bit. I know one of the challenges is that even when you move it to an evening, so for example, if we looked at moving the graduation ceremony to Friday evening, for example, the issue is that if you have that degree of heat, the turf cooks all day, and so the heat oftentimes is still there, and it often doesn't dissipate before the ceremony would come to a close. But I know that Mr. Smith and his team, they're always open to listening to feedback and looking at what might be possible, so I'm sure that they'll be doing that in the near future. So I believe when you look at the calendar, there is a day and a time for graduation. If they get a lot of feedback that it might be worth considering a change, I'm sure that they will do that. But again, just want to thank you for a really nice ceremony. Let's see. Maybe the last one is just a recognition that you go 100 miles an hour to the end of the year and you have graduation, and things oftentimes quiet down a little bit through 4th of July, and then they ramp back up. Kristen Overholt in just a minute will give us a quick just sort of snapshot on summer school. So want to just thank our faculty and staff administration at the elementary, middle, and high school levels for getting that up and running. It's good to have our students back in the building, or to have some students back in the building. Kristen is going to talk a little bit about some programs in special education. But it's also a time when adults engage in a lot of learning. So we have groups that are coming in for professional development, that are coming in to review and develop curriculum, and our administrative team will also spend some time learning together. So for the next 2 days, our administrative team is meeting here in town, and would like to thank Bob Geiger and Pat Casilio for securing the clubhouse at the Main Street Town Park for us to use. It's a beautiful facility, and it's great. You can walk outside, and there are bike trails and trees and all that sort of stuff. So we're really looking forward to the venue. I believe that free and interested board members are invited to stop by from 8 to 10 tomorrow morning. One of the books that we'll be using snippets of in our time together is Dan and Chip Heath's The Power of Moments, and so you'll see a copy of it in front of you. If you could have the first 80 pages read by tomorrow morning, there will be a test first thing. It's an essay exam. Just kidding. I think you'll really like it. If you're looking for a summer read, it will be driving part of our work, and some of you probably have deep reading lists right now, but if you're looking for a really good read, it is worth it. So I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of that. And Dr. Overholt, I'll turn it over to you for a quick minute, just for a brief update on summer school and then special education programming.
Great, thank you, Dr. Frame. And I just would like to begin with just a few points, maybe challenges that really have turned into points of celebration. First being our extended school year programming. So we learned at the end of June that BOCES, who historically has been able to offer programming to our special education students, they were not going to be able to offer that programming this year. And that really impacted districts regionally. So in very short order, with the quick work of our new Director of Special Education, Raylan Hellman, and our Assistant Director of Special Ed, Mary Jo Dunkel. They were able to create an extended school year program right here in Clarence. And that program started today. I was here at the middle school and was able to see it in action. And that will run for 6 weeks through the middle of August. So we're very excited about that. And I, again, would really commend Raylan and Mary Jo for their work. They made it happen within 1 week's time, which was quite impressive. Also, again, in the realm of special education, what we're finding currently is we are seeing an increase in the social, emotional, and behavioral needs of a number of our students. And at the same time, what we're also seeing regionally is a decrease in the placements that are available for some of our students. And due to these this staff shortages, we are going to be looking to create another social emotional support classroom here within the district. So I've been working closely with Raylan Hellman and Mary Jo Dunkel in the development of this classroom for the 22-23 school year, looking specifically to have the classroom staffed with a special education teacher, mental health personnel, and a teacher aide. So again, this will then allow students that typically, again, may have found placement in another location or out-of-district placement. This will allow us to bring those students back in district. We've had great success with our 2 classrooms at Clarence Center. So again, we're excited about this new opportunity. Again, an additional class that would be housed here at our middle school.
I would like to just make a couple quick comments, Kristen. One is just to thank again you and your team, but also Ashley Dreibelbis, the middle school principal, for her efforts in terms of setting that program up with a time frame that's tighter than what would be ideal. The second one is just making sure we have the appropriate resources for the program. So important to recognize that when we have students that are attending outside placements, there are tuition and transportation costs associated with those that are built into our operating budget for the coming school year. So for us, it really is just allocating resources differently. Instead of paying for out-of-district funds, we would be providing the personnel and staffing here in district. And just a note as well that we always make sure that when we're budgeting for special education, we know that there's going to be a certain amount of flux if we have families move into the district or move out of the district with students that have unique learning needs. And we also know that sometimes additional resources will need to be added over the course of a school year if there are learning needs. So we always make sure that we account for those things when we put together a spending plan. So if somebody's saying, geez, this seems like an unanticipated cost, do we have the funds available? It's more shifting around funds and allocating them in a different way than a straight addition to our budget. Any questions or comments from board members about that?
Can I, just a quick question, just to clarify. So the awareness, the realization, I guess, that we need to do this was the result of the loss of the summer placement, first and
Correct.
foremost, and that's going to lead us.
The extended school year?
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
going to lead us then to do something longer term at the middle
Correct.
school for the coming year.
Absolutely, and so this also, the district was able to secure emergency approval for this program. So something we will then plan for in district next summer as well.
Okay, thank you. I guess then a follow-on to that, and maybe not appreciating the timing of commitments that are made to our students for the coming school year.
Certainly.
Is there any risk that we might get another month along and find that there's other placements that are no longer going to be available,
No,
given
we've-
employment challenges?
Yeah, we've at this point recognized that it's best to create the classroom, as I've mentioned, because we would then have the ability to bring students back. At this point, we've identified those students who will be a part of this program. We don't anticipate at this point anyone coming back and saying,
Okay,
that placement would no longer be available. That communication has already occurred.
okay. Thank you.
Great. The only additional item under the report section of the agenda this evening is to talk a little bit about a community service requirement that Clarence has had for years for graduating seniors. As you know, that because of the pandemic, the community service requirement has been put on pause for the last couple years. During that period of time, there was the addition of a graduation designation in New York State, the Seal of Civic Engagement. And I believe, and I hope I get this number right, I think that we had in its first year here in Clarence, 30 students earned the Seal of Civic Readiness on their diplomas, which is quite an accomplishment. We've had success with the Seal of Biliteracy as well, but that's a great first year as we look at that particular seal. So at the same time that our community service requirement was put on hold, there was the addition of this social studies designation at the state level that was pursued here in Clarence. So in some ways that naturally led to a conversation about to what degree might it make sense to revisit the community service requirement. And would like to thank Mr. Smith for pulling together a committee of stakeholders to talk about this issue. I know that they met a handful of times this winter and this spring. I believe that there were members of our faculty on the committee, administrators on the committee. I believe there were student representatives. And we also had board members. I believe that Dawn, Tricia, and Mike were all members of this committee. So Ken and I had connected a couple weeks ago, and he shared that they did have a recommendation and asked for a bit of time to talk with you this evening. We have done some research in the district office in terms of how community service has been approached in the past. Sometimes I'll talk to folks and they'll say it's a board requirement or it's a district requirement or it's captured in policy. I don't believe that's the case. I believe that it is a long-standing tradition here in Clarence and one that the board has had input on in the past when different revisions or recommendations have been considered. So not really looking for a resolution or a vote this evening, but for looking for some dialogue and looking for, in some ways, a thumbs up or thumbs down in terms of support as we think about moving forward with something that's not just important for our students, but really important for our community. I was at Rotary on Friday, and a woman pulled me aside and was asking about it because it was an important way for community partners to have young people volunteer in different organizations. So we know that it's something that's valuable to our larger school community. So without further ado, Mr. Smith, I'll turn it over to you and Mr. Brooks this evening.
Awesome, thank you. We spend a lot of time together talking, and I want to start by thanking our committee. This is the list of the people who participated. I feel like we had some really deep conversations about community service, and we all agreed that it's very important to provide back to the community and support the organizations, the local organizations like PTOs and CSEF and everything that we have here that does a great job to support our students, but also recognizing that as the curriculum and the program changes for our kids, that we should make some modifications so that it's more intentional, the outcomes of what we're looking for. So just to refresh everyone's memory, because it has been a while with respect to community service, our previous requirement prior to the pandemic was 32 hours of community service completed by the time they graduate. You could complete 16 of those hours in grades 9 through 11, and then 16 of those hours had to be completed during their senior year, and it had to come off of a senior approved list of not-for-profit organizations. So that was the current plan that was put on pause in March of 2020 when the pandemic hit. If you read through the documents, the new curriculum documents that started changing shortly before the pandemic for the government class and then the Seal of Civic Readiness, you're going to notice a change in language from community service to service learning. So one of the things that we did, we spent some time kind of defining, well, what is the difference between community service and service learning? And community service really is performing a benefit to the local public or to the institutions of the public. And an example would be students removing trash from a stream bed, and that provides a service to the community because it cleans up the environment. Now, service learning is integrating community service into instruction where there's reflection that enriches the learning experiences, and it teaches civic responsibility. So the example would be the kids that are removing trash from the stream bed, they analyze what they found, they share the results, and they offer solutions for reducing pollution, and it also increases their leadership skills and helps to develop them as young adults. So that leads us to the proposal. And then we have a few slides to kind of go over what the Seal of Civic Readiness is, so you have a better picture of that. So the proposal would be that we create a club in our high school, a community service club, because, like I said before, we all recognize that providing service and being able to volunteer at PTO events and CSEF events and all of these great organizations, the Rotary, do wonderful things for our community. So having a club and an advisor that could work with kids, because there are benefits for completing these services, scholarships, the college application process. It makes them look better on paper. It makes them feel part of the community. Having that club could plan events to support all of our local agencies and carry on with their events. But for seniors that are not committed to the SEAL, because this is a pathway that they don't have to complete. We're talking about integrating service learning into the senior year, that they have to complete a service learning project where whatever it is that they're doing out in the community ties back to what they're learning into the classroom. So for seniors that aren't committed to completing everything in the Seal of Civic Readiness, they would have to complete 10 hours of a service learning project that's integrated into whatever their senior level class is. And for students that are completing the Seal of Civic Readiness, they would complete 24 hours of service learning integrated into whatever their senior level classes, whether it's government, the SUPA course, AP, whatever the course is. So we've mentioned the Seal of Civic Readiness a couple of times here. I just want to take a minute to kind of go through what that is so you get a sense of the requirements that kids would have to go through. Because this actually, the Seal of Civic Readiness can actually begin in the middle school, in grade 8. So to obtain the Seal of Civic Readiness, you would need to earn a total of 6 points. And in a second here, I'm going to turn it over to Rick so he can go through the chart to break down the points that kids can earn. So a minimum of 2 have to come from civic knowledge, and a minimum of 2 have to come from civic participation. And there's a variety of ways that kids can go about earning the point value to obtain this Seal of Civic Readiness. All the categories marked can be used more than once by the students. So we'll have Rick walk us through the charts.
Good evening. So the civic knowledge is all on the left-hand side, and a student could acquire these points starting right with 9th grade. In decisions they make regarding courses they may take, they would start accumulating points. And again, as Mr. Smith said, they need a total of 6, a minimum of 2 from each side. So if you look at that civic knowledge side, almost all the students in our building in Clarence are going to max out on the left side because they're all going to take 4 years of social studies. They're going to take the social studies Regents exams. These things are automatic. Now, they don't have to, but the great majority of our kids will. Many do attempt some of the AP classes or college level courses, so they're going to get those points as well. So a great number, it will be hundreds, that will all qualify for the civic knowledge. And keep in mind, as Ken said, this is a pathway, so I haven't even touched on that, because technically you could not take exams and use the pathway for graduation eventually. I'm a little fuzzy on that part, but, bear with me. Dr. Overholt can help, I'm sure. On the right-hand side is the actual participation part. So the idea here is that you've learned something, now you need to get up and apply it. You need to put it into action. So, Part 2A, Civic Skills, Actions, and Mindsets, they would complete a civic high school project. Now, this is what they're already doing in part in class now, because the state requires a public policy project for all 12th graders. So this does need to be enhanced a little bit, but it would apply here, and that's where the 10 service learning hours would come in, and that would be within the classroom. If they did a service learning project because they've declared for the seal of civic readiness, then that's the 25-hour piece that you see in block 2. That can happen multiple times. They could do 2 senior year, they could do 1 junior year, they could do 1 sophomore, 2 junior year, none on senior year. It's completely up to them. I had a student this year that would have had won his 11th grade had this program been around, because he did something for the community, and it would have absolutely qualified him for those 25 hours. Then, the Civic Experience Area 2 is in an elective class. We did not do that this year because this was a pilot year. And so there are certain aspects of this program that were not up and running yet. They will take time. As Ken mentioned, the 8th grade, we have not integrated the 8th grade yet. We haven't even gotten as far as the 10th grade. So we're working backwards. We started with 12th and we're going backwards. Continuing with civic participation, they could do an extracurricular or work-based program. Again, that wasn't out there for them this year because it was just a pilot program that was introduced only to the seniors this year for the first time. That just wasn't doable, but it could be, and that's something that we would implement starting next year. Then there is the middle school capstone project. You can see that's 1 point. We're probably a full year away from that. I mean, that's a big lift. There's going to take a lot of work to get that up and running, and I'm just being honest. We're not at the point where we can introduce this to 8th graders yet. The high school capstone project is 4 points, so that's the biggest hitter on this side. That was, believe it or not, even though it's the most involved experience to accomplish, was the one that the 30 students did to accomplish it this year, because that grew out of the policy projects they presently do. So that was actually the easiest fit for them to understand how to do this. In order to put together a 25-hour service learning project thrown at them in November, which just wasn't feasible. So this is the one where they were at, and this would involve all the aspects of doing a public policy project from A to Z. Identifying the societal problem, meeting with stakeholders, going to board meetings, going to planning sessions, meeting with the town supervisor, working up a program, going out in the field and actually making it work. And then with all of these, which is a key difference, there has to be a reflective piece. They have to come back to the school and do a presentation. So that's key. Yeah, and then one of our committee members put together some examples because there were enough of us confused that examples are usually helpful, right? There are just all sorts of ways to put your points together. So Alyssa from Mountain High School earns the seal. She earned by passing all her required social studies courses, passed the U.S. and global exam. That's 3 points on the left side. She participated in Project Soapbox, which was 1 point, and then she did her digital portfolio for the capstone project, and that gave her 5 on participation. Any way you piece these points together works, and you can start, once this is fully implemented, an 8th grader could start by doing an 8th grade level project, which transitions then into the 9th grade, so they're already thinking, this is where I'm going to go. Rocco. I had a Rocco in class this year. Rocco from Plains High School. 45% on global regions with a compensatory safety net, completed a TED Talk, received course credit. He gets 3 on the left. He got 3 on the right by doing a service learning project and being a member of the Best Buddies Club and working with them. So again, he was able to piece it together that way. We're back to you, unless there's questions.
Do you have an example of a high school capstone project from the last year? Just give us a title of it, or?
Yeah, I can give you several.
Okay.
We have them all on a shared file, we probably should have brought it up.
Just off
and
the
we
top.
can certainly give you
Yeah,
one.
just off the top of your head.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm usually loud enough. So, one was a tutoring program
Okay.
for students that incorporated after-school, I guess, daycare. It was with the city of Buffalo and the school district in the city of Buffalo, and it partnered the NFTA for transit, so that school buses, as we all know, are somewhat problematic in
Yeah.
securing.
Sure.
Didn't have to happen, but city kids are used to that.
Right.
And so the idea was that students here in the suburb, for their community service learning, would tutor students that had fallen behind because of the pandemic.
Okay.
And at the same time, they would have a place to go after school because their mom and dad is working till 5 or 5:15. The next partnership that this group put together was with faith-based organizations in the city. Now, they actually did go out and interview some of the pastors and community leaders in order to get a free space for the tutoring program, because the schools, we didn't want,
Sure.
the schools didn't want to have it in their school, and then
Yeah.
they had to have people there. So the kids would leave the school, go to the local church,
Okay.
or whatever the institution is, could be the Boys and Girls Club, could be
Right.
the Polish Falcons Club, and use that facility. High school students from the suburbs would go in and tutor in the various subjects, and then they would be picked up by parents at 5:30, 6 o'clock was the deadline. So that involved those students in the capstone actually talking to officials with the City of Buffalo School District, an official with the NFTA, they interviewed and met with that person, and then I believe they did 3 faith-based, I mean, we had to narrow it down, I mean,
Sure,
you can't do
sure.
them all.
Right.
So, pick 3 areas that seemed reasonable,
Okay.
and so that was one of them.
Thank you.
We do have some videos that we can share with you guys of the capstone
Okay.
presentations
Sure.
that they did. But to sum everything up, the way, back to the proposal, having the community service club, you guys probably are aware of the calendar that it seems like the last 13 years, there's always a day in early June where New York does new testing. And prior to the pandemic, we would use that day to have our seniors that were in jeopardy of not meeting the community service requirement for graduation. We would wrangle them up with Rick, and we'd send him and a bunch of teachers to a different place each year for them to complete their service hours. But one of the things that we talked about with this group was that this club could arrange like a community service day for the entire population. Because if you think about it, on that June 1st day was this year before the U.S. history exam was canceled by the state. The plan was to just bring in the juniors. So meanwhile, freshmen, sophomores, and seniors have nothing that day. But if we make a community service day out of it, now sure, there are going to be some kids that are going to take the day off anyway, but we'll have a lot more kids do something that's going to benefit the community around them. So that's the thought of the community service club. We would still recognize our kids for doing the large number of community service hours that many of our kids do, but transitioning to service learning and integrating that into our classrooms, because that really helps them to have a deeper understanding that prepares them when they leave here for life and future experiences. So that would be our recommendation is we do a community service club. Anyone who wants to be involved, we will use them in any way to help support our youth bureau, our PTOs, CSEF, every organization, Rotaries, and then in the classes, in our government classes 8 through 12, we will integrate the Seal of Civic Readiness. I know we're going to see our numbers from 30 go way higher than that. The kids that were on the committee actually were kind of excited about the opportunity to pursue the Seal of Civic Readiness. So this would all be integrated into the classroom. it would be more meaningful because it's connected to exactly what they're doing in those classrooms. So I would ask that you consider that, and if you have any questions, just let me know.
Just pause. Questions, comments from board members. And again, I know that we had 3 members that participated on the committee, so I'm sure they could help to answer questions or concerns that folks have.
I'd love to see those videos. the
Yeah, I
student presentations. You could distribute those, that'd be great.
I can share those with you.
Yep.
Yeah, we got to see the presentations at the meeting, and they were incredible. It was hard to believe that high school students put those presentations together.
Sure.
One of the challenges that I'm sure New York State hasn't thought out is that ideally, the capstone project is supposed to be presented to the actual players who are the clients. So, we had 30 students just in Clarence, and this is only a pilot year, which means Byron Brown, Mark Polenkars, Pat Casilio would have had to sit through 10 or 15 presentations. Clearly, that's not going to work in the state of New York. We can't have hundreds and hundreds of presentations. I mean, we wouldn't get the people to sit through them. The next option is that they have to be presented to a committee. Again, we had 30, but we could have 300 within the next couple of years. That's a lot of presentations. So what we chose to do this year, and the state agreed, was that they made the presentation into a video. In other words, if you couldn't come to the board meeting, you could give your presentation by way of an electronic video. So the kids submitted the video of their presentation, and that's how we were able to save them, and they're going off to BOCES and the state as well, because they want to see what we've done. So.
There's definitely still a lot of it's building the plane while we're flying it with respect to the civic readiness. Yeah. But it's a fun bill. It's great.
Do you have any idea of how many people signed up to do it next year? Or don't they have to sign up yet?
I can answer that. The state called it an application, and I didn't like that term because they're not going to be denied. So we called it a declaration, and it's just a form. Okay. And it went out to our student body in October, and they had until the end of December to fill it out. And this is important. Some schools wrestled with it. I know I had a great discussion with Kenmore regarding this. They have to pick up, make the effort to fill out that form.
Sure.
I mean, after all, that's the whole point, is that they're involved. They're showing some responsibility on their own. So we had about 48 students fill that out. And when push came to shove, we had 30 that finished it. Now, that was only the seniors, and it was, introduced late in October, end of October. They really didn't understand what was happening, and truth be told, a lot of our faculty don't understand it yet. We still have a lot of work to do. But I thought 48 to fill it out, 30 completing it was pretty good. So now that'll be pushed out to all 11th and 12th graders right away next year. So I would anticipate that filling out that form could be in the hundreds. Now it's a matter of tracking them, monitoring them, and teaching them through that process.
And I would just add that this was a pilot year for this region, not only within the district, but for the entire region. And Clarence was only one of a handful of districts that piloted locally. Rick, I would say probably maybe 8 or 9 districts in the consortium, so a small number piloted.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Brooks, for being here tonight. I just had one final comment in that I think the product is great, but I think the process is great as well. So it's not just what we do, but how we do it. And the fact that a group of different stakeholders were able to come together and get to consensus over something that people have different questions and opinions on, I think is a credit to the group that you brought together and the work they were able to do together. I also know it was a committee that came with homework. I think I had bumped into a couple of board members, and they said, geez, we went to the last meeting, we've got pages and pages to read, so that it was a conversation where people not only had experiences and opinions to, yeah, shaking a book at me, she'll just throw it at me. But I think that's important, is that when people are engaging in conversation about this, they've taken the time to read through and think through the requirements and the regulations and the impact here in the community. And so when we talk about a program that is encouraging students to learn and think deeply, but also get involved, I think your group was able to model that, the team that you had put together. So they did the learning and they did the thinking and the working together. So I just wanted to note that the process that you used is very much appreciated. So, and thank you to board members who were willing to engage in that dialogue.
Thank you. I'll share the videos tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and that is it for reports this evening, Mr. Fuchs.
Thank you, Dr. Frame. Moving forward, did I turn it on? Next on the agenda is the public comment session. We did not have anybody registered to speak this evening, so we'll move forward to finances. But Dr. Krupka, before I have you start, just to make sure we have it for the record, I did not mention when we approved the required resolutions earlier, we did have an addendum at our seat that wasn't in the public packet. We probably should get a separate approval just for that because we didn't read it into the record earlier. So for those of us at the table here, we have this additional resolution authorizing the superintendent of schools to employ temporary, part-time, per diem, or substitute personnel to fill vacancies in advance of a Board of Education meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Can I get a motion to approve that addendum?
So moved. Second.
Thank you for both. All those in favor? Aye. That carries. Okay, finances.
So there really is nothing unusual about the financial packet that you received today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But I did want to mention a few other things. So I've been working with our transportation department and Mr. Michelle on trying to find some new ways of recruiting that could be more creative because we are really struggling with hiring. So I'm really happy to announce that we're going to be partnering with some of our local organizations, and the youth board is allowing us to set up a table at Summerfest. So while Dr. Frame is taste testing, we will be recruiting for applicants. Please come and visit us. That is going to be Saturday, July 23rd from 5 to 11. Really happy to be joining them. Then on July 1st, I'm sorry, Summerfest is a movie with kids. The Taste of Clarence is with the Chamber of Commerce, and that's on July 1st, from 12 to 8. I'm sorry, August 1st. And then on August 7th, we will be at Antique World with a booth. So we're really making an effort to go where people are. This weekend, the local soccer youth association is allowing us to park a bus at one of their main fields, so we'll put one of our big signs up and hopefully attract some attention there as well. So again, Summerfest, Saturday, July 23rd. There's going to be a movie at night. It's from 5 to 11. Taste of Clarence, August 1st, and Antique World, August 7th. So I did want to mention that. I wanted to let the board know that I did complete the first FEMA application for the polycarbonate. It has been filed, and they called me back to say that it is in the review process. I started a second application for our daycare when we did daycare for first responders and emergency responders. That would be about $47,000, and I hope to have that done by next week. So just some updates.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions on the financial reports that are in our packet tonight? Hearing nothing, could I get a motion to approve items F1 and F2?
So moved.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. That carries. Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Michelle, instructional?
Yes, this evening we have 3 resignations, a grade level change at Harris Hill, the list of prior appointments for the extended school year program, so we get that up and going on Monday. Appointments this evening, we have 3 administrative appointments. 2 of our appointees are here. I'd like to recognize Mr. Boccaccio. He's going to be our Harris Hill Elementary Principal, and Dr. Kramer, who will be our Director of Curriculum. Welcome to both of you. We have 5 probationary appointments. 2 of our appointees are with us this evening. Ms. Owen will be our ENL high school teacher coming up next year, And we also have Mr. Curl, who will be one of our science teachers at the middle school. We additionally have 3 regular sub-positions, the TOSA positions for our instructional coaches, mentor training and mentors, Regions review instructors, proctors, and scorers to finish up our summer program. The list of department chairs for next year, fall coaches, activity advisors for the middle school, approval of training for TCI, AIS instructors, summer hours for home instruction, some new student screening, and some training for phonics first. P5 is the list of presentation compensation, and we have summer school, special education services, and also summer school appointments at all levels. P8 has summer curriculum projects from Dr. Overholt, some additional summer guidance hours, and some time for our TOSAs that are going to be our instructional coaches.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on the instructional section?
I don't have a question. Just wanted to thank Kristen and her team for getting those TOSA positions filled so quickly.
Yeah, outstanding. On that note, I assume, Mr. Michelle, now we have, are we still in the process of recruiting their replacements then for the 4?
This week we'll post those instructional postings.
Okay, thank you. All right, outstanding. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve items P1 to P10.
I'll make it, Mike.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Aye. Carries. Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight. Congratulations. Happy to have you aboard. Mr. Michelle, you want to do non-instructional?
Non-instructional, quite a bit shorter. We have 6 resignations, change in hours to support a student, also a prior appointment for a teacher aide for the extended school year program. Appointments this evening, we have 2 aides, a transportation clerk, some summer employees that are aides, approval for TCI training, and P15 is changes to our substitute list.
Anybody have any questions on the non-instructional items? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve P11 to P15?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. It carries. All right. Next on the agenda is our special needs and student activities reports. We have a number of annual
Correct.
appointments.
Yep, so a couple things that should look familiar. One is that our Committee on Special Education reviewed the programs and services for 20 students, I believe, over the last month. And our CPSE reviewed the programs and services for 9 students, nothing of particular, nothing that would be different or be of note there. That usually is what's under the special needs and student activities section. Mr. Fuchs, you'd mentioned that there are a couple annual appointments. You are correct. Those are connected to requirements that are in the Part 200 regulations. And if you took some time to look through the memo, it outlines the purpose and individuals being recommended.
All right. Does anybody have any questions on those annual documents? All right. Pretty standard. Hearing no questions, can I get a motion to approve S1 to S6?
So moved.
Thank you, Dennis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tricia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Okay. Next, we have a on our board development policy. It's at our annual reorganization meeting. We establish our liaisons to Erie County Association of School Boards, as well as NISBA and our PTOs. I know there was a list circulated in our packet of the current appointments with Ms. Canzaro swapped in for Ms. Sweeney. That being said, I know a number of people were fine with theirs, but there was a couple requests for changes. I think the ones that we need to settle on, unless there's further discussion tonight, is Ledgeview, Clarence Center, and the high school from the PTO perspective. I know, James, you had expressed interest in moving back to Clarence Center. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay. All right, so that would leave primary board liaisons that we need to assign to the high school and Ledgeview. Kim or Josh, do you have a preference between those two?
Ledgeview would work for me.
All right, so if Josh should be at Ledgeview, James at, and I'll read this in total in a second, James at Clarence Center, Kim at the high school. For backups, for alternates, just to not create an overlap, I know Dennis, you had already had the high school and you were okay with continuing there. Josh, would you be okay as an alternate for Clarence Center? And then Kim, would you be okay with an alternate at Ledgeview?
Of course.
Okay. All right, so just reading those for the PTOs, I think we have it in order, but any board member, please correct me if I misstate. I'll read school, primary, and then alternate. So Harris Hill, Tricia Andrews, alternate, Josh Lynch. Sheridan Hill, primary, Dennis, second or alternate, myself. Ledgeview, primary, Dr. Lynch, alternate, Mrs. Canizaro. Clarence Center, primary, Mr. Baglioli, alternate, Dr. Lynch. Middle school, primary, myself, alternate, Mrs. Andrews. High school, primary, Kim Canizaro, alternate, Dennis Priori. CSEF, Dawn Snyder is primary, and we have two alternates, James and Tricia. SEPSA is myself as primary and Dawn as alternate. Everybody good with those? Okay. Did anybody have any recommended changes? I think everybody was good with NISBA and Erie County Association of School Boards. With that said, Dennis Priori, NISBA voting delegate, Kim Canizaro, the alternate NISBA voting delegate, Tricia Andrews, ECASB delegate assembly representative, Dawn, the alternate representative. Myself would be the budget and finance team representative. Dawn would be the alternate. Dennis, you would be the legislative team representative, and Dr. Lynch would be the alternate. All right, everybody good with those?
Yep. Yes.
All right, excellent. All right.
We got to vote on those, Mike? What's that? We have to vote on those?
I guess with those read in, can I get a motion to approve those assignments?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. And we'll post those to the board webpage. All right. Second to last item on the agenda is our schedule of upcoming meetings. As Dr. Frame indicated earlier, there is an administrative retreat that is going to occur over the next 2 days. Board members are welcome to join between 8 and 10 tomorrow morning for the kickoff portion of that agenda. We do have our summer retreat scheduled for August 23rd between 5 and 8 in the evening. And our next regularly scheduled board meeting will be August 29th here in the middle school auditorium. Presently scheduled to start at 6. We anticipate returning to what we've done over the last few months and have executive session before the meeting, but stay tuned to the actual publication to make sure that time does not change.
At the joint meeting at 5.
We are working on the joint meeting. Is that set, Dr. Frame?
Not set, but we'll reach out to the town.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
That would be here, though?
What's
That would be here at this building, the joint meeting?
We will work through the details
Okay.
and make sure we get them to you. Yeah, I know that we typically will meet with the town and then do a dinner and then have our public meeting. So we'll work on the space that fits best and then get details out.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, it brings us to the close of our agenda this evening. Unless somebody else has anything, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss personnel matters and negotiations with the CSCA.
I'll make a motion.
Don, I have a motion.
Second.
James, I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And
Have a good night.
thank you for new faculty and staff members that are here tonight. Before you run out, come and introduce yourselves to the board. We're so excited that you're joining our school community. So thank you for being with us tonight.